Okay, everyone, welcome to the Falco community call for March 11th. We're recording this. This is the standard Falco community call. The meeting notes will be pushed to the Git repository, and the recording will be pushed somewhere else, also widely viewable. All the standard disclaimers apply. If you don't want to be recorded, please drop off. If you're not interested in following the code of conduct, please drop off. Other than that, I think we can sort of get started. I don't have a section for highlights. Is there any highlights that anyone wants to call out from the past 2 weeks? Because we didn't have a meeting last week.
Yes, we have. We have a lot going on. Basically, to a summary that we have two main highlights, and they are driver kit reaching an usable state with both support for both building kernel modules and eBPF probes with the Docker processor for CentOS, Debian, Ubuntu OS, and vanilla kernels. And the second main highlight is that the release process in which the driver kit built modules and probes will be integrated soon is basically done and works like a charm. We will do a demo later about this briefly.
Do we want to do the demo first or at the end of the call?
As you prefer.
I think we don't have very much. My stuff's going to be pretty quick, and it looks like I have most of the items. And that way we can give you hopefully the entire, like, at least second 3/4 of the call for demoing if folks have questions or whatever.
Sounds good to me.
Hey. Cool. Yeah. Why don't we jump into these items? Sorry, I forgot I was. Yeah, we could jump into these items and then we could do the demos at the end. And that'll probably be useful for people trying to review the video afterwards anyways. All right, so Chris Nova, follow up on 1.0 release date.
Okay. Yeah, so we had talked about this a couple of calls ago, and me and some of the folks here at Sysdig had like our internal team meeting, and we talked about some of this. And one of the things we wanted to propose just to get a feel for what folks in the community think was sort of defining the new release process and how we're going to manage doing releases moving forward. So I think a lot of this is going to be hinging on the work that we're about to see from Leonardo and Lorenzo that they're about to demo to us. But I think the TLDR here, the two big things I wanted to propose. One, following in suit with the amount of releases and how we're doing releases today, we're doing them about every 30 days or so. So I think as a project, we finally reached that point of let's move from feature-driven releases to time-driven releases. I think we have enough contributions. There's a couple of working groups in the mix right now and a lot of sub-projects. So I think just getting a time in place is going to be a little bit more reasonable than trying to group everything together and wait for different things to happen and start to postpone releases just because we're waiting for an unrelated feature somewhere else. So on that note, what I wanted to propose was releases every 30 days, and then for every release, in the same way that we do these open source calls, we would have effectively a release owner who's responsible for maybe for the first few even recording the release process itself to serve as some documentation for how to do one, and then going through and updating the GitHub repo, pushing the change log. I think there's probably a list of 5 or 6 things that need to happen for every release, and just having somebody who kind of takes ownership every 30 days for one of those. So I think lazy consensus here would be best, but does anybody have any thoughts around this?
Yeah, I think we can do, you suggested it to me privately. I'm just reporting. I think we can do something like a linked list for keeping this working. So like, let's say that I do the release with Spencer, then Spencer does the release with Chris, then Chris does the release with Salvatore, then Salvatore does the release with Loris, then Loris does the release with Leonardo, then Leonardo does the release with Gregor, etc., etc. So every time 2 people, and every time we do a release, there's the person that there was at the release before. So you do 2 releases in a row, and then you are free for until the next cycle.
this is how KeepCon does the co-chairs for each event. There's always like a senior who has done it once before, and there's always a new person, and we just kind of shuffle like that.
That sounds rad.
Any volunteers for the first two? And I think that means whoever does the first one, we're either going to have somebody doing it once or somebody doing it 3 times.
Maybe down the road. Right now, I'm still warming up.
I'll volunteer. Lorenzo, do you want to maybe partner for the first one with me?
I was seeing Leonardo that wanted to raise the hand.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
I
So
just
can
want
only
to
see,
give
like,
some
4
space to
people
someone
right now.
else. Just want to give space to someone else because I did like 5 releases.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So if someone else wants to go with Grace,
I mean,
otherwise-
either one of us should be there because
yeah, that was the reason I raised my hand.
Okay. And then yeah, we can record this first one and post that to the YouTube channel and maybe put a link in the community repo for how to do a release. How close are we to the next one? Do we want to get a day on the calendar just for this first one?
At the moment, in the GitHub milestones, we have set like this Friday, but I'm not sure we will have everything ready for this Friday. So maybe we can...
need to understand that thing, Leo. Sorry for interrupting you. We are stopping releasing based on features. We are starting release based on time.
Yeah.
So we don't need to be ready at all.
Okay. So whatever is it on at that date, we ship. Okay.
So, somewhat selfishly, 0.20 is broken on the IBM cloud, so it'd be kind of cool to get it out.
So we can just release.
What's broken for you on the IBM cloud, Spencer?
Honestly, I don't understand the situation. Lorenzo gave me a pull request, and then I moved to master, and it started working. But basically, the Falco kernel module doesn't build when you try to install it with Helm.
I think
the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all.
Do we want to try to just cut one on Friday, and if it goes well, then great, and if not, we can try to pick it up next week sometime.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that works for me. I think everybody's kind of working from home this week anyway, so nothing wrong with trying.
So Spencer, you just pulled out the Docker image from master and it worked?
Yep.
Nice.
That's awesome. I love when that happens.
Yeah, I probably should have tried that before I got all squawky and Slack. Sorry, team.
You didn't know because the master image are being pushed since this week. So there was no way for you to know. So you did a good job.
Okay, anything else on that before we move on?
No, I think that's pretty good for me. We'll try for Friday, and then after that we could get time on the calendar every 30 days, which I think is a good segue for Spencer. I noticed you put down at the very bottom, official meeting time, UTC 3 p.m.
Yeah, do you want to, we can talk about that now, just because there was some confusion this morning because the docs in the community call and the calendar and stuff all peg it to US West Coast time, which moved on Sunday.
Yeah. So I think
if we write, so for instance, what we could do is we could say UTC, I think it's UTC 3 p.m. right now. We could say UTC 3 p.m. and then time zones can wander around and, or daylight savings time in all the regions can wander around, but everyone will know at least when the meeting is supposed to be.
Okay. Another thought here is, so it looks like, it looks like, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert with the CNCF lists by any means, but it looks like that those calendar invites aren't really behaving in the way that people would expect calendar invites to behave. Like they seem kind of like they're an opt-in, and then if you do make a change, like it's not actually reading from cncf.io, it's just reading from some arbitrary record that it copied over at some point in time. So I'm wondering, do we want to try to reimagine our calendars so that we can just have invites and trust that if somebody makes a change or updates it, that everybody gets those? I think we ran into trouble with the build infra call. There was some confusion around invites. If we're starting another call, which I'm about to propose here in a second, And then now we have this UTC problem again with time zones. Maybe having some other calendar solution might make sense.
I won't mess with trying to show that.
Okay. So yeah, so one of the thoughts that we can do is, so right now, if you create a calendar invite in like a Google Calendar, you can actually invite the mailing list as a guest, and that basically works just like a Google group. And everybody who subscribed to the mailing list would then get a calendar invite. And as long as they're using a tool like Outlook or Google or whatever, it should automatically populate from whatever is on the master's calendar that's been created. The caveat here is that would mean that there would be one person from the community who's kind of the owner of each one of these calendar invites, and it's not like a community owned thing anymore. Does that make sense? Like I could invite the entire Falco mailing list from my Sysdig email for a Wednesday call, but then if we needed to make changes, I would be a bottleneck because I would be the only one who would be able to delete or make changes, I think. Yeah, there's not really a good answer here.
I will say that I don't use the Falco list calendar invite. I just manually add it to my own calendar.
Same.
Okay. Do we want to just make that the kind of the norm here and just put all of our documentation in UTC and
yeah, probably is better because the calendar in the CNCF list doesn't work really well. It happened to me 2 or 3 times that I missed like a meeting because it not worked. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe it's me that, but I don't know.
No, that's happened to me too. I think again it makes a one-time copy and doesn't actually do like it's not a pointer, it's a copy.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
So probably it's better to like schedule a reminder, an automatic reminder on Slack that contains that puts like a reminder for a calendar and invite people through the community repo README and the Falco README to put the event on their calendar manually or clicking some button. I don't know, something like that.
Okay.
But not via CNCF list.
Is that what I typed, what people are saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Another thing is once we move to the CNCF Slack, we'll be able to leverage like the Slack bots, and they have some other like integrations we can use for things like reminders, and we can do like an hour before or a day before or whatever.
Okay. Well, lazy consensus, I think we can say we're just going to do that. Maybe Chris and I can connect offline to get all that set up, but we'll try to do it.
I can also just add whenever I PR this document after it goes to YouTube, I can just make the change to the README as well.
Yep.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. So going back up the list. Oh, did you want to propose a new meeting?
I do, but I think that's kind of under the new BPF project bullet point there.
Well, then we can go to update on the hub's call next Monday.
Okay. Can I do a quick screen share?
Please.
Alrighty.
If you pick the squared monitor, yes.
You want me to use the square monitor?
Yes.
Okay, give me a moment. Share, square monitor, share. Cool. So the first thing is, let me pull this over. So I talked with Matt Farina yesterday. There's been some work that's been happening at the CNCF regarding this thing, which is hub.cncf.io. And this was just recently open sourced. It looks like this was kind of built in a silo behind the scenes and was just recently open sourced. And there's been a lot of chatter about this in the TOC mailing list and a few of the other Slack channels as well. So in an attempt to start to bring what is already kind of a fragmented approach to having different types of hubs together, I went ahead and I just kind of took stakeholders from all of the different projects and looped them into an open source call. And it looks like there's even more conversation around doing another call next week as well. But just wanted to kind of give an update to the Falco community. There is this, which currently has different packages from, I think, Helm and the operator framework. We also have securityhub.dev, which this is a Falco project that basically hosts Falco rules. And there's been talk in OPA, the OPA registry channel as well, about starting to bring OPA policy into a lot of this. So it's very CNCF-like for them to, for all of us to kind of come together and say, let's just put everything in one place, which there's pros and cons to this approach. I think one of the big pros is like everybody can kind of share resources, and we no longer are responsible for, you know, hosting infrastructure, building a website, maintaining a website, and developing governance and policy around a lot of this. One of the downsides is it could potentially turn into a pretty overwhelming group of resources. And I think a good example of that is this. If you actually looked at the CNCF landscape, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it was not nearly this big. And if you're coming into this blind, there's a lot going on here, and it's pretty overwhelming to a newcomer. So there's just some things to think about.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Do you think that you will put in the CNCF Hub, you know, resources for every project in the landscape, or just for projects that are like incubated or graduated?
So according to Matt's original email, which
I probably didn't read.
No, it's here. If we want a list, I can add it. Let me put this in the chat here. If somebody wants to format that link for me, that'd be great. But basically, you can see here, it looks like they picked operator framework, Kudo, and Helm. And I think in the original spec, they had mentioned Falco, although nobody really reached out to us about it. So again, I think this is more of like we just need all the right people on a call at the same time, and we can figure out what we want to do. So the question here is, do we want to, as a Falco community, potentially get involved with something like this? And I don't think we need to answer that right now, because there's still a lot we don't know about this project in general, which hopefully we can find out next week. But just things to start thinking about as a Falco open source community. How do we want to manage our rules and our hub integrations? And does it make sense to have one specifically for security, or do we want to try to push Falco to get involved here? So maybe we can bring this up again next week, and I'll give another update after this call. And of course, if anybody else wants to join this call, just let me know. I can add you to the calendar invite. And then hopefully we'll have enough to where we can kind of make a decision as a project. Cool. All right, so that's the Square Monitor Hubs pitch.
Thank you for sharing. And I didn't grab a link to the Falco Hub because I actually don't have that memorized, but we'll get it added soon.
I'll add it right now.
Okay. But then right back to Chris Nova, update on the live streams.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is another...
Actually, and this might be related. There was a topic here in the 1.0, which was sort of a KubeCon update, which might be related. We didn't really talk about KubeCon being canceled on this call.
Oh yeah,
or postponed.
That's a good point. That's why I had added that there. I guess we skipped over it. But yeah, this is kind of related to KubeCon being postponed. So I guess one of the things here is we had talked about doing a 1.0 release for KubeCon, which I think is important. KubeCon is going to be a really good opportunity for us to solve this problem of having a 1.0 release and kind of giving a lot of our Falco release cycles, like what we're thinking of is a long-term support version. And so now we have a little bit more wiggle room for what we want to include on this release as a project. So I think having the monthly 30-day cycles, maybe get a few of those cranked out before the next KubeCon, and then plan for a 1.0 release, either right before or right during the actual event. And again, that just kind of gives us an opportunity to draw a line in the sand and say, as a project, we're incubated, we're releasing our first long-term support, we're calling it 1.0, and we now have all of these sets of features that we've built out over the incubation process. And I think that's really going to be a strong candidate for us and a good piece of documentation for us when we start having conversations around proposing Falco to go to graduation. Having stable releases, backporting patches as needed, having a healthy release cycle, having folks driving the release cycle. There's going to be a lot of these types of questions when it comes time for us to try to move Falco to the next stage. So that's kind of the update there. And then I think the other question I have for everyone is, now that KubeCon is postponed, there's going to be a little bit more, I don't want to use the word chaos, but I would say maybe unknown elements of the conference, especially because we're, sort of trying to schedule an international event a little bit last minute, whereas usually these things, if you look at it, they're usually scheduled 1 to 2 years in advance. So things like getting the Falco community together, getting Falco and OPA together, maybe doing some sort of SIG security update. Like, there's a lot of different things we as a project could potentially do here at KubeCon if it is going to be a little bit more flexible for this next one. So just, again, food for thought. If folks have ideas or want to bring stuff up, we're happy to make it happen. Cool. And on that note, the reason that KubeCon was postponed was because of this international pandemic that's happening right now, called the coronavirus with COVID-19. And one of the things that we had been talking about internally at SysDig was starting to come up with ways of promoting Falco and promoting things that we're doing in the open source community, in lieu of actually being able to go and meet people in person and travel and do a lot of the open source advocacy that we've done in the past. So in the Falco community repository, there is, if you go to Falco security/community, there is a live stream directory there. And there's not really anything that says what a person can or can't do to live stream. I'll probably start doing some of these. I think Leo and Lorenzo also talked about maybe doing some. There's other folks internally at SysDig who might be doing some as well and contributing them upstream. But we have some freedom here and some flexibility. If folks even just want to start hacking on Falco and recording the calls and posting them, now's a really good time to take advantage of this resource if we want to start trying to be more productive remotely while everybody's stuck at home right now.
Absolutely. And I actually have been on Twitch 3 times the last 2 weeks and going again today, and Falco features pretty heavily. So.
Oh, can you share your Twitch account and can we promote that as a community?
Sure. I've been trying to be, it's just, I've been trying to be a little light on the tweeting promotion just because those first couple streams can be a little tight. But today, I'm more than happy to promote it. And I'll probably tweet out some stuff as well.
Awesome.
Should be going live early afternoon.
Cool. I'll probably, I don't know if you've been following along on Twitter, but I've recently started to get my HD camera set up, kind of dialed into science here. So I'll probably be experimenting with doing some of my own streams and doing some Falco demos and some other things as well. I think anytime we can, as a community, we can do streams in clumps, I think it makes a lot of sense. One of the ideas I had was starting to reach out to some of the other successful live streams and see if we want to get a hack open source, hack the planet style network together where, Fridays from noon to 5, there's these 5 shows that kind of are all back to back and we can talk about all of them together. So, you know, the more people we have streaming and the more we can clump them together, I think the better it's going to be for everyone.
Heck yeah. Yeah, obviously with the coronavirus and stuff, the DevRel Slack is like, I mean, it's also just group therapy right now, right? But the stream, the Twitch streams channel in there is popping. And we're going to try to get some of the DevRels all together and stuff. So I'll try to cross-pollinate those datas.
Can you add a link so that other people can join that Slack too?
It's kind of dumb. I'll put a link. You have to request an invite.
This is Ashley's thing?
I don't know who Ashley is. It's the
DevRel
Collective.
McNamara. Yeah, now it's Ashley Willis. Yeah, her and a handful of others created this, I think, at Microsoft a couple years ago.
Cool. Yeah, I will post a link. I just have to dig it out of my I have to dig it out.
Okay, cool.
Okay. On to the new BPF project.
I'll be quick because we only have 30 minutes left. So I guess the TLDR here is there's been a lot of talk about creating a new BPF probe that is owned and maintained by the Falco community that would effectively be able to wire up to Falco in the same way that our current driver hooks up to Falco, except for we as a community would have some flexibility around how we're getting information out of the kernel, how do we want to structure this information, how do we connect that up to rules. There's a lot of interesting design patterns that we're interested in doing. And I think the important thing here is this is going to give us full end-to-end Falco implementation with everything owned in the Falco security org, which is really important. So in the same spirit that we created the build infrastructure working group, I wanted to start a new BPF/input API working group where we can start to just kind of focus on this new element of how do we start to get information out of the kernel as an open source community. Again, HackMD, weekly calls, YouTube. We've done this a few times, so it's just going to be a kind of another rendition of that, but just wanted to mention it here. And of course, if folks want to get involved, come join the party. If you want to learn about BPF with the person who wrote the book on BPF, this is a great place to do it.
Awesome. Okay, so then if that's done, I think we can move on to these demos we were talking about, one around the release workflow and one around driver kit.
Yeah, so I have to share the screen. Can I share my screen?
Go for it.
Thank you. So as said, one thing, we basically prepared a set of slides. We'll try to go a bit fast because we also have to demo the driver kit. Basically, the problem that we had in the release process of Falco was mainly that Falco release process was internalized by Sysdig, was so coupled to Sysdig infrastructure and even resources. For example, to release the 0.20 that now we backported, we had still to use the Sysdig Jenkins to build Falco, to test it, and to deploy the packages built from Falco source code on repositories. For example, on a deb repositories owned by Sysdig with a GPG private key owned by Sysdig, and so on. I don't want to bore anyone else. So this was the main issue that we had in the release process, and also that it was completely manual. Every time you needed to release, you had to create a git tag and then go to the Jenkins of Sysdig and push buttons manually and start things manually. So we basically worked to remove all the coupling from Sysdig infrastructure and from Sysdig resources, and we also worked to automate it 100%. So the result is that now we now have the process of signing packages automated with a GPG key that's hosted on in the public on Bintray. Bintray is basically a platform to create deb, RPM repositories or generic repositories. You can also host GPG keys, and you log in with GitHub. So everyone that's inside the GitHub Falco Security organization can have access here. You can create teams and things like that, but basically the way to enter is being in the GitHub organization and not having a system account. We also create refactor the Docker images built from the deb, RPM, and TGZ packages that we built during the building during the test infrastructure, and we started to publish them automatically from Circle CI. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, basically whenever a new PR gets merged into master, that's a first step that builds Falco on CentOS or on Ubuntu. A second step that runs the tests on that code. And then if you're on the master, this is what happens on every PR. And if you're on the master, there are three other steps, namely the signing step that basically signs the RPM. The deb is automatically signed, the deb packages. Then there's a step that publishes the packages on bin tree. And as you can see, we yesterday merged 2 PR, and we have here Falco Security that releases version. Last step, if I found the file, it's to publish the Docker image. If you go on the Docker Hub now, you can see that Docker images are updated to yesterday. So,
Leo, can you zoom in a little bit, please?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm on my square monitor still because Lorenzo made me use it.
As you can see, the master minimal and the master slam images haven't been pushed yesterday automatically from our continuous integration here, namely here. So every time we merge on master, we will add these master images. When this process, so these images master minimal, master slam are the development images. So we build and push them every time we merge on the master. This other happens when we tag on the master. So basically when we release. And that's the new release process, nothing more. We merge PR, we create the changelog, we merge PR changelog, and then we tag that commit, and basically the rest of the release is automated. So the Friday recording will be hopefully very, very short, Chris, if everything works. And this is completely different from before, because before, as you know, the release taken 2 man days. So here we put some more details about the step details. We will share these slides that Lorenzo and I created. We will share these slides, so I don't want to bore everyone now going into details. There's a screenshot of what people will see, people not in the organization. As you can see, I'm locked out it. And we will also have for free stats about downloads of Falco, statistics, things like that. Okay, I just click on the only package that have not been downloaded, but anyway, we will have statistics too. And then this is an image that explains the difference between development release, the one that just starts from a commit being merged on master, and the release with 0, for example, 0.21.0. We also fixed the versioning scheme of Falco. So, for example, imagine that on Friday, me and Chris released 0.21.0. And then on Monday, Lorenzo merges a PR into the master. That version will be a development version named 0.21.0 dash a number, which is the number of commits since the last release, since 0.21, plus the commit hash of that merge. So basically it will be something like 0.21.0 For example, if the PR contains just 2 commit minus 2 plus 4E5075C. While doing this process, we also refactored all some of the resources, almost all. We just missed the tests. For example, we moved the script install from sysdig S3 to the Falco website and refactored all the S3, the dry sysdig S3 references inside it. We also, for the Docker image I was forgetting, we also basically grabbed the packages of the dependencies that we have for building Falco for some older kernels, and we published them here, so that basically everyone can in the future continue this to work without having access to sysdig S3. These are the 2 lines that you will need now. From now on, the Falco website is already updated to install Falco for example, on CentOS with the public key that's published on the Falco website and not on S3. Same for Ubuntu, Debian, and so on. Okay. This module and the BPF probe build and delivery is what we are working on. We fixed the build part. We are working starting today on the delivery part of the kernel modules and of the pre-built kernel modules and the BPF probes. The solution that Lorenzo did is driver kit. Driver kit is basically a bunch of Go code that's able to take a YAML file, given a YAML file in which you specify the kernel version, the target, and where you want the kernel module and the BPF probe to be outputted in your host, in your system, and the driver version. This is the sysdig tag in this case, to build them and to copy them in the paths that you specified. We are ready. As I said, we can try this. For example, let's give a. Okay, let's for example build.
I think you're only sharing your browser.
Oh gosh, sorry.
No problem.
If I'm able to find new share, desktop 1.
You zoom in a bit, Leo.
Yes. Better?
A little bit more.
Now?
One more.
One more.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so basically, let me find if I still have files here. For example, okay.
So while Leo finds out, basically driver kit connects to a Docker daemon or a Kubernetes cluster.
Yes.
And it will take the YAML file that Leonardo showed just a second ago. And based on what you have in that YAML file, it will build the kernel module and the BPF probe for you in that Docker daemon or in that Kubernetes cluster. In this way, on Circle CI, we can use the Docker daemon that they give us. So while the Circle CI script starts, it will start a Docker daemon for you that you can connect to, and you can build many of them. And that's what you are trying to do now. Or we can use the CNCF cluster, Kubernetes cluster that Chris created if we go out of capacity on Circle CI. So we can just start the framework here and let's see how it works. We are gonna change our, the way we work. Basically, before the pre-built modules were on the sysdig infrastructure and were run by the sysdig Jenkins, and you had no way of interacting on how those were built, besides making a PR to sysdig that was controlled by some internal mechanisms. Now, once this is done, in the test infra repository will be there will be a folder with a lot of YAML files with all the kernels supported. And if you just need a new kernel, you can just, make a PR against that directory, and that will just work.
So basically, as you can see here, bottom right, you can write a YAML file, specify the kernel release that you want to build for, and the paths where you want to obtain the module and the probes. Please note that you can also, for example, specify only the module or only the probes, and it will understand that you just need the kernel module, not both of them. The target and the driver version. The driver version is the hash of that we have. This is a detail, but it's worth saying that we have in the CMake in Falco, the hash of the SysDig version. This is what we call driver version. So once you have this file, you can basically run driver kit.
You need to add the Docker, Leo.
Yes, I need to add the Docker. You can driver kit -c the path of the file, okay, log level, who cares, and Docker, which is the processor. As Lorenzo was saying, you can also use Kubernetes here, but for sake of simplicity, we will run it with Docker now. And it starts finding the kernel either yours. In this case, it also finds the kbuild to build the kernel module on Debian, and it basically starts. For example, now it's building the kernel module, and then he is building the probe. Look, March BPF file type object. Okay, so as you can see in the logs, we have a new kernel module built for this platform. So for Debian 5.4.0, etc. On this path, and also an BPF probe. If we do modinfo temp lore kernel module, we obtain this, as you can see. Okay, if we do, for example, yes, file Chris, we can see that we have our BPF elf, which is named Chris.o. So that's it. As Lorenzo said, you can also create other your own YAMLs. For example, vanilla one is one for vanilla. Yeah, there's this one that's it's the vanilla for my Arch Linux, and basically I specified my kernel, the target, vanilla, where I want. Okay, this is the old format. I should put here output module, and okay, for vanilla kernels, but this is already written in the docs of DriverKit. You need to specify the base to base 64 encode your kernel config.
Base 64 encoded, yeah.
Base 64 encoding, yes.
So because when you build from a distribution, you download everything from them, so it's already there. When you're building for a vanilla kernel, you need to specify the kernel config you want the kernel module build to be built for. So
how this will work in the context of the releases? As I said, we already are building and shipping deb, RPM, and binary distribution packages of Falco and also Docker images. We will do the same thing for kernel modules and eBPF probes. Please notice that the version of kernel modules and of the eBPF probes is different from the kernel, the version of Falco. So it's untied, is uncoupled from that release workflow. What we came up with was that we just create a build grid with a set of files like this. We pre-built kernel modules and probes where we can for this set of combinations, system kernels, and etc. And we publish them on a generic repository on Bintray, so in the open. And basically, only when someone changes the SysDig version in the Falco repository, we use that new SysDig version to build new kernel modules and new eBPF probes. But this process is, we are making it uncoupled from Falco because we don't want that every time we release a new for example, little Falco release, we have to build again all the modules and so on. So we are making this uncoupled.
Yeah, because the driver version, now that we have control over it in the Falco repo, it can basically stay the same for 3, 4, or 10 releases. We don't.
Yeah.
So we don't want to rebuild everything every time.
Guys, one question. May I?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. How does this work in the context of Kubernetes? There will be some like driver kit injected as containers that will pull from the repository, from the release, according to YAML.
We have to, for sure, we have to update the scripts that we have at the moment that search for the probes on the sysdig S3 and make them look at the bin tray repositories that we are going to create. But also driver kit enables you other modes. For example, let's say driver kit has a Kubernetes processor, not only one that uses Docker to build the kernel mod, but another one that uses Kubernetes to build your module. So you maybe can integrate it in your infrastructure if you need to have to own it. So you can basically use inside your Kubernetes.
So the scenario is that right now, when you start Falco in Kubernetes, there's a script called Falco probe loader,
Yes.
which is going to be renamed in Falco kernel module loader if it's for kernel module, or Falco BPF probe loader if it's for the Falco BPF probe. And instead of going to the sysdig S3 where it goes now, it will just go to the bin tray. So driver kit is not involved there. Right now, the Falco probe loader, which is going to be renamed again, also contains some scripts that build the Falco kernel module for you. We want to replace those scripts with the driver kit using a new builder that we didn't develop yet. It's called local. So instead of driver kit Docker or driver kit Kubernetes, it's going to be driver kit local. And it will build for your local machine. But this is just, when we will be replacing those scripts there. Right now, the replacement is just, we will just gonna change the URL in the script so that it pulls from the Falco and bucket instead of S3 of system.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Lorenzo, thanks.
So in test infra, we are working right now basically on this in test infra, and we will use Circle CI to ship and deploy to bin tray bucket pre-built kernel modules in the BPF for this set of combinations. At the moment, when you do make, for example, you can do something like this in that directory that we call driver kit inside the test infra. It's okay, something wrong when you do demo. It's
I can show it. It works on my machine.
Yeah, I have something misconfigured. Yes, oh, sure, please.
I have a quick question while we're waiting for Lore. For the build grid that you showed, where you had a list of all of the different supported architectures and operating systems, if we wanted to, if somebody wanted to add a new one there, do they just open up a PR?
Yes.
Okay.
They just go to this config folder, create a new file like one of those, and they input the kernel version, the kernel release they have from here, like you name her, and it's CentOS. They just add this and they put the output path, which
and also the driver version. But okay.
Do we have documentation around how to add your own implementation here to build the driver and kernel module for your use case?
It's gonna be in this README right here, and also we have
an extensive documentation driver kit. Yes.
That explains you how driver kit works.
I opened the guys.
Yes, I saw one for Flatka, right?
Yes, because I would like to support also these.
I don't really know Flatka, but the first thing that I will try is to use the vanilla target to build a kernel module for Flatka.
I think
CoreOS. It's the fork of CoreOS, so it's
Maybe we don't need to create another target for CoreOS based distribution. Maybe vanilla just works fine for them.
What about different architectures here? The reason I'm asking is right now our Kubernetes cluster is running on ARM, We can definitely move it over to x86 if we want. But I think it would be helpful if we supported different architectures for the driver and for Falco.
Yes, we need to do that. The real thing is that driver kit will need to run against a Docker daemon or a Kubernetes cluster that's for that architecture, because you are gonna build the kernel module and it's gonna be very, very better if you build on the same architecture you are targeting.
So maybe we can just use the ARM Kubernetes cluster to build ARM drivers.
Yes. Also, to support that, the train is going over my
House.
Wait a second, sorry.
I have a small question about that YAML file.
So when we will have the, when we will decide about this, like after everything is finished and polished for the first stage, we can do another round of development on driver kit, which already supports multiple architectures, but which need to some changes on the builders, like the Ubuntu builder, the CentOS builder, and the Vanilla builder. Every distribution has its own builder with different scripts. Every one of them will need to be changed a little bit to support fetching headers for the new architecture we support and these kind of things. Because right now we are gonna take, you know, the headers for AMD64, and we will need to go to get headers also for ARM7 or something like this. But it's totally doable. So we can do that.
Yes.
Also, if we start doing that, we will also need to start building Falco for that architecture. So it will require, I think, an effort which is coordinated between multiple community members to do changes here and there for different architectures.
Probably the major effort will be that, not building kernel module for other architecture, because in driver kit we already basically put the support for different architecture.
So coming back to the demo, let's say that I do make G16, it starts building 16 containers, all of them with driver.
No, eight containers.
8 containers, right? All of them will start building all the kernel modules and stuff. Now I'm gonna stop it because it's gonna take a while. And in the output folder, we are gonna have all the KO and all the HO files with all the different
Kernel modules. Yeah. So that's it. The last thing that I can show you about driver kit is basically we spent some time to have it work like a serious CLI. So we have a really good help. So basically, you can use a configuration file, or you can use the flags. You can even use configuration variables, something like this. Driver kit, for example, output module equal tmp chris.ko, and then call driver kit and pass other flags, whatever. So please try it, report issues if you find, contribute some new YAML to build the grid that we're building, and that's it.
We will definitely. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
This is
Thanks.
awesome. This is going to solve probably one of the top 2 or 3 biggest issues we see in Slack for Falco.
Yeah.
hopefully.
Good job.
Great job.
Thank you.
So we're at the top of the hour. I think I want to let everybody go. If you have any final notes, throw them in this HackMD. If not, I think, Chris, did you say you will pull request it, or would you like me to?
I've already got the PR open. If somebody could just send me the string of texts we want to add for the UTC for the time, that I can add that to the README, and I'll push the recording to YouTube and open up a PR here in the next few minutes.
Okay, sure. I'll send that to you.
We need a new MC for the next call before we go.
Oh, yes.
Grasso.
Who wants to MC it?
Yes, I am available.
Yay.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
See everyone next
Ciao.
week. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Dobbiamo fare in italiano. We should do this in Italian.
Ciao a tutti.